Chairman Lips, Vice Chairman Holmes, and Ranking Member Russo, and esteemed members of the House Health Committee. Thank you for having me here today. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Laffay. I'm a practicing physician. I see patients one by one. I do my best job every day to listen to and educate my patients who are sometimes disclosing information about themselves or showing me physical symptoms that they have never shared with anyone else. That relationship is intimate and personal. Have you ever been to the doctor? Can you imagine yourself vulnerable in an exam room? Significant decision-making arises from these personal conversations, options regarding how best to handle your own health, including disease prevention and processes. This is informed consent. Now imagine there's a government official in the room with us, or your boss, or maybe even a local grocery store owner, weighing in on how you should care for yourself based on their opinions and their needs. In order to make an informed decision, you need to have facts. In our current culture, we have not been afforded all the facts. Scientific discussion is being censored to a level that it's not being allowed. We have been heavily directed by misleading propaganda, for instance, bold statements about how these injections can stop spread and prevent infection in the injected individual, though this has not been proven, and there is real-time evidence to the contrary. We've been largely kept from seeing all the consequences of these injections clearly, though quietly they've been associated with We have been largely kept from seeing all of the consequences that these injections have been clearly, though quietly, associated with, including neurologic damage, convulsions, illness, death, continued spread, and continued contraction of the disease. For instance, according to VAERS, which we've just been recently discussing, a passive and notoriously underutilized reporting system, there had been over 4,000 deaths and greater than 11,000 hospitalizations in those taking the injections through May 14th, reported. Having this information as readily as being told that everything is safe and effective would and should weigh heavily on an individual's own risk assessment during decision making. As a patient, I'm a doctor's dream. I'm healthy. I choose to live in a way that supports my immune system. I take vitamins, eat whole foods, move my body, actively decompress from stress, and I spend time with family and friends and in nature. Given this work that I put into my health, it might make sense for me to decide to rely on my own immunity. It's not my responsibility to put the health of the greater good before the health of myself as an individual, though that is my decision to make. Maybe you're a patient who's immunocompromised for an uncontrollable reason and consequently unable to rely on your own immune system as readily. Your risk-benefit ratio looks completely different than mine, and you may choose to decide, knowing all the facts, that an injection is less of a risk for your own situation than the illness, and therefore choose the injection. That is your right as a patient. I will not accept the idea that my right to make medical decisions in my own best interest or my family's own best interest is less important than another patient's right to make theirs. The Constitution was not set up to protect the rights of certain populations. It was based on protecting our rights as individuals. As legislators, it's your duty to ensure those rights remain intact. It's always been our right to weigh a decision regarding a medical treatment or therapeutic based on our own individual risk assessment. Autonomy, informed consent. These are the founding principles of ethical medicine. When did it become an employer or university's right to make those decisions for us? When did my health become someone else's responsibility? And to that end, since when do they even have the right to know what choices I have made? Ohioans need the vaccine choice and discrimination protections included in Sub-House Bill 248. I strongly urge the committee members to vote yes on this vital legislation. Thank you, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Doctor. We'll start with Ranking Member Russo. We have about 5 minutes.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Dr. Laffay. I think I've seen you before in another committee as well, so good to see you again. You know, I had a very interesting conversation, actually, and I can't remember what your specialty of medicine is. I think was it internal medicine? I can't remember.
I'm an emergency medicine physician and functional medicine
Okay.
physician.
I thought maybe it was emergency medicine because I actually had a very interesting conversation with a neighbor who is over emergency medicine at one of our local hospitals here, and I asked him, you know, how are things going now that more people are getting vaccinated, and you know, what is it looking like in the emergency room in the hospital right now? And we were talking about that a little bit, and he said something that really just sort of struck me. He said, you know, actually, he says, we've had a lot of volume coming into the emergency room, and it's people coming in feeling like they are having an adverse reaction to the vaccine, being very nervous about the vaccine, but when they're evaluated, you know, the majority of those, it's just a normal, it's not a long-term reaction, but people are very nervous about the side effects or potential side effects, so they're coming straight into the emergency room. And I just wanted to, you know, just hear from you. Are you, you know, when we think about self-reporting, and the VAERS system is a self-reporting system, is there the potential that the reason we're having a lot of reports in that system because of this vaccine in particular is because, you know, a lot of people, and I think this is something we should acknowledge and discuss, are very concerned about some of the side effects, and, you know, you may not feel great for 24 to 48 hours. Do you think that this, the self-reported issue and people feeling very nervous contributes to maybe what's reported in VAERS, but also perhaps having people go and seek, whether it be emergency room care or reach out to their provider because they are afraid that they're having an unusual side effect?
Through the chair, thank you, Ranking Member Russo. It is true that VAERS is notoriously underreported. Actually, a government-funded study prior to this year, which I think has probably changed things somewhat, it found it to be 1%. When I approached my director about, you know, how to handle vaccinated individuals and concern for injury and what we should be looking for, and brought up to him our duty as medical professionals to be reporting these, because I serve in the ER largely a community that doesn't have a lot of access to medical care, and a lot of them would never self-report. It's actually a very tedious process. So, excuse me, his response was, what is VAERS? I have no idea what you're talking about. And I think that that's more the case. I think largely as a medical profession, we aren't even aware of its existence. So I think the chance of this being over-reported is just not, I don't think there's a chance of it. I do think that there are more visits to the emergency room for anxiety than anything else. I think the fear culture that we've created has been horrific on our culture, and there was more visits to the ER for anxiety around COVID and COVID complications than, and just the management of COVID than anything else. COVID itself, vaccine injury, anything.
Representative Gross.
Thank Vice Chairman Holmes to Dr. Laffay. Thank you so much for your testimony today. Can you speak to me a little bit about, you know, a lot of people say that we need to vaccinate in order to be healthy. And in order to get rid of, it's interesting, we went from natural immunity after having the disease, such as with varicella, to the only way that we can get healthy in Ohio is to get a vaccination. Could you speak a little bit about natural immunity and what you believe, as a professional physician, would be the reality of achieving herd immunity through natural immunity as well as immunization?
Thank you, Doctor. About 1 minute. Answer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Through the Vice Chair, thank you, Representative Gross. Just to keep this brief, I think it's been largely ignored. And I think there's a larger concern in those who've had the natural infection that they could have a potential larger reaction to the vaccine itself. So on 2 counts there, I think it's a disservice to society that we are completely taking that off the table. And no one's talking about how to keep yourself healthy. I feel like that really is underwhelmingly talked about in medicine in general.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the considerations for time.